Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Canadian government is sending hundreds of troops to Eastern Europe as the world is on edge of a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine's top diplomat is pleading for the Western world to hit Russia hard with sanctions as tensions heighten in the Baltic states. And a special interview with a Lethbridge athlete who returned from the Beijing Winter Olympics after winning a bronze medal in the bobsleigh event.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is revoking the Emergencies Act. This is 10 days after police cracked down to clear out hundreds of demonstrators with the Freedom Convoy who had camped out in our nation's capital for 3 weeks. Trudeau said the federal government will be ending the act because the situation is no longer an emergency. Trudeau says a committee will now be set up to review the declaration of emergency.
Within 60 days, there will be an inquiry into the circumstances that led to the Emergencies Act being invoked. It will look at how we got there and why it was required. It could look at policing. The inquiry could also examine the funding, influence, and disinformation that supported the illegal blockades and occupations, both foreign and domestic.
The legislation, which replaced the War Measures Act in 1988, allowed the Trudeau Liberals to declare the areas around Parliament Hill a place where people were prohibited from assembling and granted RCMP the ability to share information about supporters of the convoy with banks in order to freeze accounts. Now, O.J. Laidley is an Ontario trucker who participated in the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. He says he had his account and money frozen, but police told him that he could have access to his money if he promised not to go back to our nation's capital. Laidley explained how it all unfolded.
I received a call from the RCMP when I was still on Wellington, telling me that I should leave. This was Thursday, I think it was. So I should leave before. If not, then I would be liable for arrest and, pretty much tickets. So after I left there, I found out that my bank account was frozen. I called the bank. They transferred me to the fraud department. When I spoke to the fraud department, they told me that they were unable to actually clear it because there was a note for them to direct it to the president. I called, but they said I should call back on Tuesday, and then I received a follow-up call on Monday afternoon. They just asked me if I was planning to go back and let me know that they were working with the banks to pretty much come up with a method of clearing the accounts that they deem, pretty much appropriate. So they were going through to figure out the persons that, I guess fit the criteria of having their assets pretty much released.
Laidley says he is still working with his bank to gain access to his money. A protest demanding an end to all COVID-19 vaccine mandates is winding down in front of the Manitoba legislature. Organizers say trucks and other vehicles have left a street that has been blocked for almost 3 weeks. They say the protests will continue on a smaller scale without vehicles in nearby Memorial Park. Winnipeg police gave protesters a deadline of late Wednesday afternoon to move out or face charges and have their vehicles and other assets seized. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada is deploying hundreds of more troops to Eastern Europe. Ottawa will also be imposing new economic sanctions on Russia in response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to send forces into 2 regions of eastern Ukraine.
We will ban Canadians from all financial dealings with the so-called independent states of Luhansk and Donetsk. We will sanction members of the Russian parliament who voted for the illegal decision to recognize these so-called republics. We will ban Canadians from engaging in purchases of Russian sovereign debt. And we will apply additional sanctions on 2 state-backed Russian banks and prevent any financial dealings with them.
Ukraine's top diplomat, meanwhile, says Russian aggression has brought the world to the edge of the largest catastrophe since the Second World War. He's urging Canada and the United States and their allies to hit Russia's economy very hard.
Yesterday, President Putin moved to recognize 2 pieces of Ukrainian land as independent entities. Ukraine, does not and will never recognize this absurdity. Neither will the world recognize it. The world must respond with all its economic might to punish Russia for the crimes it has already committed and ahead of the crimes it plans to commit. Hit Russia's economy now and hit it hard. We have two plans. Plan A is to utilize every tool of diplomacy to deter Russia and prevent further escalation. And if that fails, Plan B is to fight for every inch of our land and every city and every village.
Well, the extreme cold warning ended for much of southwestern Alberta, thank goodness. It was good to feel a little bit of a reprieve from Old Man Winter. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, it was great to feel the warmer temperatures, but we could also be feeling more of the white stuff on our faces again soon?
Well, as soon as tomorrow, Hal, we could see those 60% chance of flurries, along with 30 to 50 kilometer per hour winds, bringing with it some wind chill, making tomorrow's -5 feel more like around -11. The good news, though, is that those plus temperatures are on the way, and we could possibly even be seeing double digits by the weekend. I will have more details about that coming up later on in the newscast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Despite Alberta having one of the best funded healthcare systems in the world, the COVID-19 pandemic revealed shortcomings that apparently need addressing. A good example is the number of people on waiting lists for surgeries. This was a hot topic brought up during the province's throne speech on Tuesday. Alberta's Lieutenant Governor announced that in the upcoming fiscal year, the province will attempt to improve the number of surgeries performed.
To do so, the government will accelerate the Alberta Surgical Initiative, significantly increasing the number of surgeries performed in chartered surgical facilities in order to reduce wait times that have grown during COVID. Major capital investments will expand and modernize hospital capacity, including completion of the Calgary Cancer Care Centre and historic expansion of the Red Deer Regional Hospital and expansion of Edmonton's Neuroscience and Mental Health Institute.
As the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, the city of Red Deer received some very good news. The province announced a $1.8 billion initiative to redevelop and expand the Red Deer Regional Hospital Centre as part of the province's strategy to increase healthcare capacity. Government officials say the $1.8 billion hospital expansion is the largest in Alberta's history. It'll begin with a $193 million investment into 200 new inpatient beds. That will increase hospital capacity from 370 to 570 beds. The expansion will also provide for 3 new operating rooms and a new cardiac catheterization lab. Now, the completion of the expansion is slated for sometime between 2030 and 2031. February is Heart Health Month, and a local resident who suffered a heart attack over 2 years ago says people should keep an eye out for any of the warning signs. Tony Days of Lethbridge says he didn't think to go and get checked out prior to having his heart attack, and he didn't anticipate it happening in the first place.
Unlike every man out there who, it takes a few years extra probably, but I do get my doctor's visits in and had a physical not that long before the heart attack, and everything looked okay. So there were no red flags as far as that goes. To me, nothing stands out before the heart attack. And some hockey parents that we, my son's team, we played that weekend, and they said, yeah, my color was off, my eyes were bloodshot. A couple of them thought that something was wrong. I never noticed a thing.
The Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation says some of the signs of a heart attack warning include sweating, discomfort in your chest, and shortness of breath. NDP finance critic and Lethbridge West MLA Shanna Phillips says a number of choices made by the UCP government has made the cost of living even more expensive for Albertans. Phillips says Albertans are really struggling right now.
They're struggling to make ends meet. They're having to make extremely real sacrifices just to keep a roof over their head and put food on the table. Now, in fact, yesterday we learned that 4 in 5 Canadians have changed their household menus to adapt to rising food prices, according to a survey released by Angus Reid. 46% of Canadian consumers are switching to cheaper brands at the grocery store, 1/3 are cutting back on meat, and 1 in 5 are buying fewer fresh fruit and vegetables. Now, here in Alberta, half are finding it difficult to feed their family. I've certainly heard that from my constituents, and I know we've heard it from Albertans across the province. Now, meanwhile, the UCP's throne speech released yesterday was very light. In fact, I would say it's virtually non-existent for any help to help Albertans today to address the rising cost of living.
MLA Phillips adds the only thing of substance from the throne speech was the UCP potentially offering rebates on Albertans' natural gas bills. A Lethbridge police sergeant at the heart of the Meangate scandal was found not guilty of 1 count of discreditable conduct today during a misconduct hearing at City Hall. Video journalist Micah Quinn was at the hearing and has more of the details.
The situation stems from the WhatsApp group called the Meme Militia in 2018, where officers sent offensive and malicious memes depicting former Chief Rob Davis and Deputy Chief Scott Woods in a negative light. Moulton previously admitted to 5 counts of guilt in relation to the misconduct in November of 2021. Moulton sat in to learn his fate on Wednesday morning regarding count 7 of the charges. He was found not guilty of discreditable conduct using tyrannical and oppressive conduct towards a subordinate. The presiding officer, Paul Manuel, says he found him not guilty of this count because there was not enough evidence from witness testimony. Moulton previously pled guilty to 2 counts of neglect of duty, 1 count of insubordination, and 3 other counts of discreditable conduct. In total, 5 officers were charged with misconduct under the Alberta Police Act and Police Service Regulation in relation to the meme group incident. Matters have already been concluded for the 4 other officers involved. Moulton was the senior officer to the other 4.
Thanks so much, Micah. By the way, the presiding officer adjourned the hearing until March 25th, when sanctioned arguments will be heard. Meanwhile, Lethbridge Police Association President Jay McMillan says all of the misconduct hearings and negative media attention surrounding the so-called meme militia have taken a toll on other members of the Lethbridge Police Service.
There's a bit of a hangover effect from all of that attention and all of that negativity, and it weighs heavy on the shoulders of the men and women who work here. We just need to keep moving. I think everyone's really glad that it's coming to a conclusion. For everyone, we can get to a point where everyone's able to move on and get to a point where we're healthy again and have it be done. Because really, that's what everyone should be entitled to, is a resolution of some kind.
The RCMP Major Crimes Unit is investigating an inmate's death at a federal prison in Drumheller. Correctional Service Canada says David Clausen was found dead on Monday following a serious assault. It says no other inmates nor staff were injured. Clausen had been serving a sentence for manslaughter since March of 2017. February 23rd is a day recognized across Canada as Pink Shirt Day, a day in 2007 when 2 students took a stand against bullying after a student was harassed and threatened for wearing pink. Word got out online and hundreds of students showed up in pink, some dressed in pink from head to toe, standing together against bullying. Now, the event was also recently celebrated at Lethbridge schools with a number of students participating. A former Lethbridge pronghorn athlete can now call himself an Olympian. Ryan Summer and his team took home bronze this past week at the Beijing Winter Olympics. BCN's Angela Stewart had a chance to catch up with Summer on his new medal and Olympic experience.
Still can't really put into words what it means coming home with a bronze medal. It's surreal.
It's a dream come true for this former Lethbridge pronghorn, Ryan Summer, who's sporting some flashy new hardware. Summer, along with his teammates, took home bronze at the Beijing Winter Olympics for 4-man bobsleigh.
It was a cool experience for sure, and one I'll never forget.
Summer says his journey to the Olympics began shortly after graduating from the University of Lethbridge.
I knew a guy that was a track and field thrower, and that's what I did in university, who went into bobsled, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I found an open recruitment camp for Bobsled Canada.
And from there, his training began.
I was putting in close to 40 hours a week. That was everything I did. It was what I ate. It was how I slept. It was how I prepared. It was everything I was doing. He was one of the greatest mentors that I had throughout this process.
Summer says Lawrence Stanky, head coach of track and field at the university, played a huge role in his athletic career.
He's always been super supportive. He was a coach that I'm very grateful to have when I was in university. I think he definitely shaped me into the athlete that I've become.
He's been an incredibly dedicated individual, a leader, someone who's definitely had an impact in our program when he was here at the university. Definitely very happy to hear that, his experience at the university was a positive one.
For right now, he's continuing to soak up the win, but moving forward, Summer says he plans to keep on training and hopes to compete at the Olympics once again. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
The town of Raymond has been a dry community for over 100 years. Town Council is interested in engaging with residents to figure out if they should amend the current land use bylaw to allow for the sale of liquor at licensed restaurants.
And so what Raymond's done is we have an online engagement platform, letstalk.raymond.ca, where we have a bunch of background information and where we also outline the process that we're going to be following. And we're encouraging all residents of the town to create a profile and read up on the information and participate in the dialogue there. We'll also have a couple of in-person engagement sessions on March 7th and March 23rd at the Raymond Senior Center at 7 p.m. That'll be live streamed as well on our YouTube channel for people who can't attend in person.
Town staff say they recognize that there will be differing opinions on this matter, but they're encouraging residents to remain respectful throughout the process. Police say a man told his 4-year-old child to fire at police officers following a dispute over his order at a McDonald's restaurant near Salt Lake City. The father's in custody. Fortunately, no one was injured, and the child is now with child welfare workers.
They told him that they would fix his order. At that time, we believe he brandished a firearm. The McDonald's employees called the police department, and Unified Police Department responded. They drove up by this vehicle, the suspect vehicle, knowing that he brandished a firearm. They immediately tried to make contact with the driver, knowing that he might be armed. They pulled him out of the vehicle as quickly as they could. He was non-compliant the whole time. And as soon as he was pulled out of the vehicle and they started to take him into custody, one of the officers noticed a firearm coming out the vehicle, and he was able to deflect it, but the firearm did go off and went into the awning here at the McDonald's.
Wow. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured. Well, we saw the mercury climb around 10 degrees today. Unfortunately, it's getting even warmer here in southwestern Alberta. Complete weather details are coming up. It was so nice to feel much warmer temperatures in Lethbridge once again. In fact, we may soon be back up to double-digit temperatures. Jeanette Rocher is here with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, we may see a few flurries first, but then a warming trend is on the way?
Yeah, it seems like a little bit of a broken record these days because we're getting those warming trends and then snow, warming trends and snow. It's happening again this week, 60% chance of flurries tomorrow, Thursday. That -5 is the high, but it's going to feel more like -11 in the afternoon with the wind chill, much chillier in the morning as well. As we look to Friday, this is where we see that warmer trend happening once again, high of 2 degrees, sunshine. Sunny skies throughout the weekend as well. 7 degrees the high on Saturday. And look at that. Into Sunday and Monday, we are seeing double digits again. High of 10 on Sunday. High of 11 degrees right there on Monday. And look at that temperature for next Tuesday. We could see a high of 14 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. So we'll have to keep our eye on that to see if that actually comes to fruition or not. Average high for this time of year, 3 degrees. Average low, -10. 15 degrees was where we were at back in 1983 and in 1940. We had our chilliest day on record, which was -31. Sun rose this morning at 7:26 and our sunset this evening at 6:03 p.m. So we are right over 10.5 hours of daylight. Seems like summer is coming just like that, just around the corner, isn't it? 4 degrees the high in Victoria tomorrow with a 40% chance of flurries. Sunshine in Vancouver tomorrow, also 4 degrees the high there. 7 degrees in Edmonton tomorrow, looking at a 60% chance of flurries. That will actually be clearing up by the afternoon. In Calgary, -7. Flurries actually starting in the afternoon tomorrow in Calgary. -16 the high in Saskatoon tomorrow. In Regina, same thing here, mix of sun and cloud, -20 the high. Same thing for Winnipeg, -20 with sunshine. Now just keep in mind the extreme cold is still in effect for Winnipeg and Regina, looking at frostbite in minutes, and you're going to be feeling more like the -40s with that wind chill. Toronto, beautiful sunny day, -4 there, -9 in Ottawa under sunny skies and sunshine also expected. in Montreal tomorrow with a high of -9. Now, in Atlantic Canada, a lot of that rain and precipitation has dissipated, bringing sunny skies in Fredericton. -6 the high, -5 the high in Halifax. -8 the high in Charlottetown. They are looking at some flurries tomorrow, looking at some rains tomorrow as well in St. John's, Newfoundland, with winds that are up to 80 kilometers per hour. High of 2 degrees though, so there you go. That is your forecast.
Oil prices are heading towards $100 US per barrel. Analysts, however, say the chances of crude smashing that threshold depends upon what happens next in Ukraine. The potential for a war in Eastern Europe has made energy prices volatile over investor fears that conflict between Russia and Ukraine could disrupt oil supplies. Some economists believe that the energy shock could be accompanied by a global confidence shock that drags equity markets down and could impact Canadian economic growth later this year. Farmers in Saskatchewan will face higher crop insurance premiums, but also higher insurance coverage. The Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation announced a record $405 an acre in coverage, mainly because of higher commodity prices and increased yields. The average premium per acre will rise from $8.59 to $12.05. Agriculture Minister David Merritt says extensive drought in the province resulted in 30,000 producer claims last year worth $2.4 billion. That was around 4 times higher than the 5-year average. BC has earmarked $1.2 billion to fund disaster recovery efforts and future response to the threats posed by wildfires, floods, and heat waves in a budget that forecasts a $5.5 billion deficit. Finance Minister Selina Robinson said a 3-year climate fund will support ongoing disaster cleanup and rebuilding in southern BC communities hit hard by last November's floods and mudslides. The budget did not include a total estimate of the recovery costs, prompting the government to add $1.1 billion contingency fund in its accounting to cover future costs. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 163 points on the day to 20,744. The Dow was down 464 points to 33,131. The S&P 500 was down 79 points to 4225, and the Nasdaq was down 344 points on the day to 13,037. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 19 cents to 92.10 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 13 cents to 462 US. Gold was down 12 cents to 1908.88 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at 24.55 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.38 per bushel, barley's at $9.47, canola's at $23.52, and corn is at $10.87 per bushel. Live cattle were down 70 cents to $143.05. Feeder cattle were down $1.45 to $162.78, and lean hogs were down $4.05 to $108.03. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.54 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has revoked the Emergencies Act. Trudeau mentioned that Ottawa could not keep the act in effect a moment longer than needed. On Wednesday, he said it was the right thing to do since there was no longer an emergency. He added that existing laws are sufficient at keeping Canadians safe. The act was brought in to end the weeks of protests against government COVID-19 health measures and vaccine mandates. Coming up, an exclusive interview with the leader of the Coutts Alberta blockade protest, who explained why so many grassroots Canadians have issues with current government mandates. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. The 35th annual Moonlight Run is taking place March 19th with both in-person and virtual events. This year's run will include a 6-kilometer walk and 10-kilometer run. For the in-person event, both distances will begin in downtown Lethbridge at Casa and head into the River Valley for a loop in Indian Battle Park. Then you will climb Wendy's Hill before returning to Casa. To register and for more information, visit moonlightrun.com. Come and enjoy Nika Yuko Japanese Garden's annual Winter Light Festival, open from 6 to 10 p.m. Wednesday to Sunday until February 28th. Bundle up and take in the massive light display, ice sculptures, and other features throughout the garden. Discover Japanese customs and traditions that are celebrated during the winter months. To purchase advance tickets and for information on COVID protocols, visit nikayuko.com. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
A southern Alberta town recently became the focus of national news when a rally against COVID mandates was held near the Coutts port of entry to the U.S.-Canada border. The rally quickly turned into a blockade, preventing traffic from coming and going. For many in the region, the blockade was a huge inconvenience. It also disrupted millions of dollars in federal economic trade, and the mayor of Coutts says it divided the people of his tiny village. It all came to an end, though, when RCMP arrested 13 people and confiscated a number of firearms near the rallies. Marco Van Hugenbos is one of the organizers and spokesperson for the Coutts rally. He joins me from Fort Macleod, Alberta, to discuss what he believes are some misconceptions surrounding the rallies, why they were there, and what it stood for. Marco, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, a lot happened this past week. There were a number of arrests. As far as you know, did those who were arrested have anything to do with the rallies happening near Coutts or the people that you knew?
With the information that's been released, some of the pictures, the charges, obviously, the firearms, etc. We're looking into this a bit, and some of the faces are familiar. Now, when I say familiar, there's a lot of people that have come through Coutts in the 17, 18 days that we were there. What role they played is zero to none. They weren't part of the organizing team. Like I said, we didn't have the tools to vet people. So we're really looking into who these people are, what their backgrounds are. But I do believe that the majority of the people arrested were individuals the wrong place at the wrong time.
Okay, why does your group feel it's necessary to look into who these people are? Isn't that like the police job, or are you just more trying to make a statement that these people had nothing to do with us?
That's like, when it comes to the violent element that the RCMP has said was within our group, we've obviously distanced ourselves from them right away. We've made that very clear from the beginning that we were there peacefully, and on Tuesday morning, we left peacefully when this information surfaced. That was not a decision that was made lightly, but we felt it was the best decision. In regards to looking into these individuals, not that we're looking into these individuals, we're looking into the circumstances of the arrests, the individuals involved, and things. I can't comment too much on things at the moment, but things aren't lining up 100%.
Okay, what do you mean by that exactly?
For one example, and this is Southern Alberta. This is, Coutts is a farming community. Everybody has firearms used for purpose of hunting, recreation, etc. Some of the firearms that were on this property that the owner disclosed are not even shown in the official picture that the RCMP has released. So that's one example of why things don't add up. We're not sure what's going on, but it's not making sense to the individuals on the ground. It's not making sense to our lawyers. It's not making sense to the homeowner.
Okay, so there was a homeowner in the Coutts area who had weapons confiscated.
So the home where the home where the arrests were made, there was RVs on site. The people that were staying there were not known to the homeowner previously. Now, of the 13, the majority of these youths, these young adults, were known to individuals in the protest. We've talked to their parents, and they're essentially harmless lads and gals and girls from McGrath and Raymond, and that's why we feel wrong place, wrong time. There's still a lot of questions that are unanswered, but the fact that the RCMP has released a picture of the weapons, the body armor, that doesn't include a firearm that was seized doesn't make sense to us.
Okay, and you're saying that some of the weapons in the photos are weapons that were not there?
I'm not saying that. I don't know what was there, but we do know a firearm that definitely was there is not in the picture.
Yeah, what's the feeling right now in the town of Coutts? I know you've kind of been meeting with them a lot this week. Are people feeling let down, like they don't have an outlet to display what they're feeling anymore? Or are people relieved that it's gone? What's the feeling there?
Well, I imagine, you know, like any event, there's a certain amount of excitement, whether you're for or against it, but eventually it does wear off. So, you know, I do believe there would be relief to see us go. I do think we were very accommodating with traffic. When we left, we literally had a grocery store full of food downstairs. We gave that out to the community. We helped the community, you know, when we had a lot of people down at Coutts, and for example, the 2 snowfalls we had, we sent guys out shoveling the sidewalks for elderly. You know, every complaint that was made aware, that we were made aware of, we addressed. Does that mean we had the full support of the community? We didn't. We don't know that, but we did have a lot of people reach out that were in support of what we were doing and definitely worked with us.
Okay, great. Did people leave because they were scared of what police might do? Were they afraid of other criminals who have maybe infiltrated their group? What exactly happened? Can you tell us kind of what happened last Sunday night and last Monday? We're hearing from RCMP that they took in excavators and somehow disabled these tractors and trucks that were on the highway. It's hard to kind of understand unless you were there. What did you see happen?
Yeah, so I'll quickly start with Saturday. Saturday, I was pretty occupied. I was in meetings with a couple of MLAs and MPs in Milk River. Now, I was aware of events on the ground in general. You know, things were run by me. I wasn't made aware of the details of every aspect. It's too much. So I knew there was excavators being brought in. The negotiators who I was in touch with daily, multiple times a day, reached out to me when these excavators were brought down within sight of the highway, and the RCMP definitely overreacted. And as a response, I worked with them and said, let's move these excavators back to out of sight of the highway. A couple hours later, 7, 8 o'clock Saturday night, we were informed that that still was not good enough and that the decision was made from the top. When I say the top, it could have been the commissioner, you know, higher ups. I wasn't made aware of names or positions, that these excavators would be disabled. Even though we did pull back the excavators, they were privately owned on private property. We did inform them that that was obviously not legal, and they said, and I have proof of this, they said, we'll deal with these consequences later. There is currently a civil suit being filed against the RCMP for this. This is a bit separate of the whole Coutts rally. Going into Sunday was, you know, Saturday, Sunday was a weekend, a lot of people coming and going, pretty quiet, right? The RCMP was doing was very heavily involved in the Milk River blockade, just from an enforcement safety aspect. I think Coutts was real quiet. You know, there was barely any RCMP on the ground. Sunday night, we fired up all the tractors. So if you're aware of the blockade, there's a lot of farm implements being used to blockade the highway. We fired them all up, right? You know, batteries can drain. So we thought, hey, it's been a couple days, it's been a bit colder. Let's fire them all up, let them run for 5-10 minutes, turn the lights on. And there's a lot of people there, right? And it's probably a bit of a show as well. Unfortunately, 2 individuals did start driving one tractor and one truck. And there was, if you look at the videos, the RCMP definitely overreacted as to what it was these individuals were driving around. And there was a RCMP vehicle that happened to be on the highway, and it shows the video shows that they were close together. But as a response to that altercation, you know, like I said, it wasn't anything serious. But as a response to that, the SWAT team rolled in. Now, we actually interrupted their operation because they had a warrant for what happened after the event Sunday night at the saloon for this residence in Coots. And their warrant was for 10 o'clock till 11:59. And we, at I think 9:30, we happened to be doing this and we interrupted their operation and they came in heavy at the saloon. While they were there, things were very tense for a while, but de-escalated quite rapidly because we had no intentions. It was a complete misunderstanding. But while they were there, they did make 2 arrests, and 2 of those individuals are still held in custody. And then shortly after things de-escalated, I dealt with the RCMP, I dealt with SWAT. An hour after they left, they executed their warrant at this residence in Coots. And just to go on record, this residence had nothing to do with the rally. I do know this individual was very helpful in the 2 weeks that we were there. And I just feel again that just a harmless person, wrong place, wrong time.
I'm sure there's so much to it. So this would be the incident that RCMP was saying that a tractor and a truck were driving towards them and he had to swerve out of the way. That's the incident that you're referring to now.
This truck and trailer were harmlessly driving around, and this RCMP vehicle did pull in front and these guys did stop. Was there, is it intimidating when you got a big 4-wheel drive tractor and you may have never seen one in your life? Yes, completely. But to say that the truck and the tractor assaulted that police vehicle, if you look at the videos and if you were on the ground, you will know that that is not the case.
Wow. So you're saying there's just a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstanding going around the whole Coots thing.
100%. Yeah.
What is your main message to people, to the community, to our viewers?
Well, I think the message we rolled in with was we were looking for an end to all mandates and all emergency measures. We left without that, without all of that being put in place. On a provincial level, we've definitely seen a change of course. We're not looking for recognition. We understand they could never recognize what we did there, but we do see Kenny's government speeding things up. And even in the last 4 or 5 days, his tone has changed. He's been on the offensive with the ATA. He's been on the offensive with other governments who are still putting mandates in place or have strict mandates. The reality of it is that we need to remember that it's his government that did put these mandates in place, even though now he's looking to lift them and somehow be the hero, or I guess he's got a leadership review coming up, right? He's fighting that fight and he's looking for support that way as well. As to the message, this is bigger than COVID. This is about governments listening to their constituents. You see it federally, provincially. We have a say every 4 years, or if it's a minority government, every 2 years, possibly sooner, but we don't really have a say. If you look at what's happened with COVID, many things have been put in place, many rules, many mandates, many not necessarily laws, but where do the people get to have their say? Every couple of years we have an election and we get to decide between one or the other. But there's a serious disconnect between the grassroots and the people in power. And do I have all the answers as to what better system looks like? Well, I think it goes back to, here's one example. So in the United States, the judges are elected, right? They're held accountable every 4 years. Here we have judges that are appointed for life. If you know the difference between the two, you can understand real quickly how there can be a real disconnect between the two systems, right? So it comes back to people representing, the powers to be representing the people. And there's two sides to everything, but I do feel that this movement, not our movement, but I believe there is a movement. I believe there's a worldwide movement, countrywide, that people are getting involved. People who have stood on the sidelines and said, this doesn't affect me, or I don't I don't really care. They're getting involved. They want to have their say. They want to be heard.
Marco, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Well, North America has been grappling with racial tensions. What is the proper way to deal with this ongoing issue? Today's guest is one of two pastors, one white, one black, who each have managed to build racially diverse congregations. Joining me from Memphis, Tennessee is Pastor John Siebling. He's the senior pastor of the Life Church and co-author of God and Race, a guide for moving beyond black fists and white knuckles. Quite a title there. Welcome to Bridge City News, Pastor John. Great to have you on today.
Jeanette, thank you so much. Really big honor for me to be on the program with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So maybe first of all, tell us a bit about the backstory. What sparked you and your African-American co-author, Pastor Wayne Francis, to write this book?
Well, obviously, if you've been following the news, this is a very relevant subject, has been for many, many years, but it seems like the last few years, especially 2020, things kind of, went to another level in terms of the pain. We saw a lot of protests. We saw a lot of different things happen. Wayne and I have been friends for many years, and we just had it in our heart. Both of us have built diverse congregations, church congregations. We've been in Memphis for 25 years. Which has sort of been a hotbed of racism. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated here. And we just felt like, hey, why don't we come together? I'm not sure how many books have been written by a black, man and a white man, both coming together. And so we said, let's do this. We did a sermon series in our church first, and it was just so much great response that we started to get, publishers reaching out to us. And it's been amazing to see the response and to be able to, we alternate chapters, so it's written really well. Wayne will write a chapter, then I'll write a chapter, and our story is woven through, and it's been great.
Wow, it's too bad that it even has to be an issue to begin with. But like you said, you're living in quite a hotbed there, Memphis. I mean, all the South just has its contention. All of America, really, when you think about it. Maybe talk to us a little bit about the Black Lives Matter movement. How have relations changed since the movement started, and what can be done to improve the overall situation?
Well, I'm not an expert per se on the movement, but I know in 2020 that phrase became a real important phrase. And I think, we had talked earlier about, the fact that for some white people, they would say something like Black Lives Matter, of course, because all lives matter. But the point is, in 2020, really what we needed to say is Black Lives Matter, period. I'm not an advocate for the organization, but I believe in that statement for sure. Of course, all lives matter, but I think our Black friends and our African-American friends need to hear us say that and put a period at the end, just so they know, because I think there have been seasons where they perhaps didn't feel like their lives mattered. And certainly we see, after the brutal killing of George Floyd in May of 2020, we saw a lot of emotional eruption, which, was real. And so I think the whole movement came out of that. I'm not an expert in the organization or the movement per se, but I like the statement because I do believe Black Lives Matter.
Definitely, yeah. So you think they just want to be seen, they just want to be acknowledged.
Right, absolutely.
And I think there are a lot of opinions on what racism actually is. So how would you define racism in practical terms?
Well, I think racism is when you harbor opinions about someone solely based on the color of their skin, and you have presupposed ideas or thoughts in your mind. I think some of the response we've been getting to God and Race has been amazing. I had a friend who texted me who was driving his child to school, and he said he saw someone drive in the neighborhood, and thought in his mind immediately, well, they must be coming to clean somebody's house. And he just got this sense of conviction because he's in the middle of the book, and there's a whole chapter on profiling, and he realized, wow, I've got some progress that needs to be made. And I think for all of us, it may not be your fault that you have racism or sort of racial kind of, discrimination thinking, but you do have a responsibility to change and to look at it in the mirror and let God and let let some new thinking come into your heart about people that look different than you. And let me just say one more thing, Jeanette. I think it all starts with relationship. When you sit across the table with someone who looks different than you and you ask them their story, particularly in the South, again, we'll just talk about the Southern United States. If you're a white person sitting across the table with a Black person and you're building a relationship with them and you ask them, tell me your story, and you listen with an open heart, you'll be surprised to hear some of the things that you hear about some of the things that they experienced. And so all that begins to, work on your soul and work on your heart, work on your mind.
Yeah, that is such a good point, because you don't know what somebody else's reality is. You can have all these preconceived notions and stuff, but until you actually really know that person, you really don't, you shouldn't be saying anything, really. And it's so interesting to me that you being a pastor, and then your co-author a pastor, and the name of your book is called God and Race. So why that title, God and Race? How does God view race anyways? I would think that God would be the most unracist of all.
Right. Well, God created all of us. That's right. He created us, and he created us in his image, and we are all different and we look different. And so, I think a book about race is powerful. A book about God can be powerful, but if you bring the two together, I think that's really where you find the ability to bring our identity back into how we've been created. And if you can get your identity rooted back into your creation, which is God created us, I think the scales begin to fall from your eyes and you begin to see things different. I always like to encourage people, you may not have, so maybe you were raised in a home where your parents were racist in their with their jokes or words. And so maybe that's not your fault, but now you have a responsibility to again, uproot some of those things and see people for how God has created them.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good point. Is it possible that we, both white people and people of color, can hold racist views and attitudes without even realizing it? I think you just kind of mentioned the gentleman that was reading the book maybe didn't realize it before. So if this is the case, how do we recognize this and how can we change this?
Well, one of the things that we talk about is educating yourself and realizing maybe the history of your country, your history of your city, maybe even, talking to your family and your parents, and you realize, there's probably some hurt that has happened in the past. And so you educate yourself on your own upbringing. But I think, reading books, all right, like God and Race, okay, doing a little education and being willing to open your heart and your mind to new thinking. And you'll be amazed at how, and confront is a strong word, but how some new thinking can kind of confront some of that old thinking, some of those old mindsets. And our goal, Wayne and I's goal in writing the book, is that people would see our relationship modeled. And we also have a companion guide. It's a study guide. It's a 5-part video series that churches can use, small groups can use. And in those videos, Wayne and I are talking together. And so our goal, our hope is that we're modeling some form of open-handed and open-hearted dialogue that can motivate people to begin building their own relationships and hearing someone else's story. And you can't deny someone else's experience. You can't deny someone's story. it is their truth. It's what they've experienced. And if you keep your heart open, it can really impact you.
Oh, yeah. No, that's wonderful. Now, do you find that racial groups tend to live and congregate in the same areas as opposed to intermingling? I would imagine maybe more so where you live.
I think it's easier to, we're more comfortable with people who are like us. So we tend to migrate, and churches do this, and neighborhoods do this. And we as individuals, we're looking for people who look like us. And so sometimes that's why we have to push ourselves out of our own comfort zone and kind of step across the street and talk to somebody different than us, meet somebody, start spending time with somebody different than us. Push yourself out of your comfort zone in a way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's fear-based?
I do. I mean, I think, the fear of the unknown, fear of, we talk about, kind of the fear of, it's a perfection problem, or, particularly when you're trying to build a relationship with somebody that looks different than you from a racial standpoint, from an ethnicity standpoint. Sometimes we're afraid of saying the wrong thing. We're afraid we won't relate. We won't have anything that in common, and we won't have anything to relate with each other about. But nothing good happens in fear. Step out of the fear that you have, and do something new. Take some risks. Start building some new relationships, and it'll change your life.
Interesting. That's awesome. Do you have any thoughts on critical race theory that's being taught in the public schools? Some people, I guess, believe that it's necessary to decrease racism, right? While others might believe that it's actually causing more division than unity. What are your thoughts?
Personally, as a Christian, it doesn't line up for me with my conviction and my commitment to the Bible. I think as a Christian and as a believer, my identity as a Christian is first. And so I think sometimes with critical race theory, really critical theory in general, is it sort of causes us to lift other identities up above our identity as a Christian. So I'm not a white person first. I'm a Christian first. My whiteness is below that. And so that is my particular opinion. Maybe there's some, pieces of critical theory or critical race theory that are valid and valuable. And I've certainly heard people talk about that. But I think it can tend to create a shame where white people are concerned, and it can tend to create a victimhood where African Americans are concerned. Again, just my opinion. I'm not an expert on this theory, but I believe as a Christian, that's my number one identity.
Okay, so you mentioned Christians. So how can Christians then start meaningful conversations about race? Is this something that we should be doing? And are there certain approaches to this that we should avoid? That's one thing you mentioned before, that you might not know how to approach the subject in order to, you want to avoid maybe unnecessary arguments.
So Wayne and I in the book kind of lay out what we call these ground rules. And they're very simple ground rules for having discussions with people that are different than you. And, you got to listen. I think you have to listen with an open heart. You have to look, and that means you're looking into whatever the other person is saying. You're looking them in the eye, right? I mean, one of the challenges we've had with COVID-19 is the isolation piece. So we've not been able to be together with people. So it's much easier to communicate via social media, which is not always helpful. So you look, and then number 3, you learn. Let's learn, let's grow, let's educate ourselves. Let's read God and Race, a guide for moving beyond black fists, white knuckles. And then number 4, we should laugh. And it's one of the things I appreciate about Wayne. And I think you should look for relationships where people can help you be yourself. And so I don't need to be perfect when I'm with Wayne. I don't have to have all the answers when I'm discussing things with him. And so I think we got to give each other some grace to laugh a little bit. We're going to make mistakes, but I think that's all part of building relationships.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see racial reconciliation going over the next decade? What needs to happen?
That's a very difficult question. We wrote the book, and we're in this process. I like to say we're in it for the long game. And so we're hoping for 1,000 churches to use our video curriculum, the God and Race video curriculum, to begin small groups in their churches and in their communities where people of different ethnicities can get together and have good discussion. And I think that can create a movement. So I hope we're making progress. We're moving toward greater reconciliation. I think it's the goal. And again, we don't suppose that one book is going to change everything, but we're doing our part. And I think Christians, we all should be doing our part, and everybody really, to try to bring harmony into our communities and into our cities. And I think by God's grace, we can do it.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Pastor John. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Jeanette. It was a real honor for me to be with you.
Thank you. Such an important subject, too. John Siebling is the co-author of God and Race, available at Amazon.ca. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.